Hey there, everyone. Now, we've been talking about the perspectives on the special parcel tax that's here in California City. And we have some questions and answers that we're going to be doing here. And so I have a list of questions here. Not a lot, just some. And I have Dwayne that's going to answer them.
Okay, let's get to it.
All right. So our first question is, somebody says, I live in an apartment. Do I have to pay the tax?
No, the tax is on a parcel, so the landlord is the one that pays the tax, not the tenant. So you don't pay it directly, no.
So then the follow-up question would be, do I, as the person who's renting, do I get my rent end up raised?
Well, your landlord can raise your rent anytime they want. They don't have to have a special tax to do it. But what you may not realize is that we've had a special tax in place since 1980s. And so if they were going to raise your rent, they've already done it. You've been paying extra, if that's the case, for probably as long as you've been there. So actually, the question is, are they going to reduce my tax? I mean, my rent, because they're not paying the tax, and no, I don't think so. Nobody's going to reduce your rent. So you'll continue to pay for it as part of your rent and not get it unless you vote for it. Then you're...
So if the tax passes, then my rent shouldn't change at all. But if the tax doesn't pass, then technically, my rent should go down, but it probably won't.
Right, you'll probably continue to pay the rate except you won't get the police and fire protection that you were getting before because we don't have the special tax. And even if they did raise your rent, if you have a place that has 8 units, you're talking $2 a month increase. I think you can handle that.
Yeah. So another question, why do we need a special parcel tax? I thought the medical marijuana industry was supposed to be generating a bunch of tax money, so we wouldn't need a special parcel tax.
Yeah, I think everybody thought it was going to happen. Usually people are thinking pretty positive, and they think, okay, we're going to bring it, everybody has these big plans. We're going to bring in all the medical marijuana, and they're all going to build overnight, and we're going to have just tons and tons of money pouring in. And it didn't happen. Everything is always more complicated than you anticipate. And so they've had, hundreds of companies apply for permits. But it's a complicated process. There's all kinds of steps to it. And so only I think one is actually in operation. There's a few more that are coming on pretty soon. So yeah, it's way behind schedule. One of the big issues is that finding funding. Banks aren't used to, they have all these things they're used to loaning for, and they're not used to loaning for medical marijuana, and there's no history on that. So actually, I think the state just passed a resolution. They're going to do some incentives to open up for banks to loan for that. But until that happens, that could be a while before that comes in.
Is that just because banks giving out loans, they just don't have any statistics or anything on the success of them?
Yeah, it gets pretty complicated. It's a new industry, and so they don't have any history. They don't have history to say, oh, this is a good investment. I'm gonna loan to it. There's nothing there, and you have conflicts between the state and the federal government. It's still illegal in the federal government. They're just not enforcing it, so it's a risky thing for banks generally. So anyway. We don't know when this is going to come, and chances are it's not going to be as big as we anticipated. And this is in place to fill in until then. There's a part of this, I think it's in one of the other questions, that as those revenues come up from medical marijuana or whatever else, then they will automatically reduce this tax even before it comes to an end in 5 years. So there's a mechanism in there that as those come in, the tax goes down.
The tax says it's supposed to drop 90% when the medical marijuana starts to pay taxes. So how does that actually work?
That's exactly what I was
Yeah.
talking about. So it's the one thing I kind of worried about in this tax because it's a little hard to explain. But best way is by example. Let's say that next year the medical marijuana or whatever industries produce an additional $100,000 in tax revenue. What will happen is that 90% of that, or $90,000, the next year, our special parcel tax will drop by $90,000. That's for the entire city, right? So it only comes down, $1.50 per parcel or something. It's not a lot.
Okay.
But so as those revenues go up, the parcel tax goes down
Until it's zero.
until it's zero, or it comes to an end in 5 years.
Or negative when we start getting money back.
No, it's not going to work that way. And they did 90%, and I'd use $100,000. We could be talking millions, so it could be significant, and it could drop all the way down to zero. I don't think so, but it might. And the reason it's only 90% is that saves 10%, and that 10% will go into the general fund, and that'll fund other things. I mean, we can expect that there's some inflation and things that happens over the next 5 years, and unexpected things, or maybe we would like the city to do some good, positive, additional things, that they haven't been able to do because they didn't have the money. So that's why it's only 90%, and then we have 10% that goes to the general fund.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. This person says, I have lived in California City for a long time, and we have been paying this special tax for a long time, but nothing ever gets better. Why should I vote for another tax? It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, I heard this question, and you can kind of sense the frustration. It's like we keep paying and nothing changes. But it's a little misunderstanding of what the tax is about. This last tax that we had in place was specifically to pay for police and fire protection, and it's been very effective in funding that, but it wasn't designed to do other things.
Okay.
So if you're expecting improvements in Central Park and such coming out of that, not only it can't by law, it has to be spent on police and fire protection. So the other things are dependent on the general fund.
So just as the last one that we had in place and this one that we're voting on is specifically to pay for police and fire.
Yeah, in that respect, they're identical.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you want more, we need to vote. We have another special tax that's much, much more.
The last special parcel tax was supposed to be temporary. Why are we voting for a special tax again?
Good question. And again, you can sense kind of the frustration if things don't get better. We voted for temporary tax. And in fact, there's been temporary tax of some type or another since 1980s, is my understanding. So,
And it's been the same kind of temporary tax?
I think they were for different things, focused on different things, but yeah, pretty much the same. They were parcel taxes and they were temporary. So, no, I forgot the question.
Well, the question is why are we voting for it again?
Right. Okay. And most cities have.
I know they were trying to make it permanent.
Right. And there's good reason for that. But most cities have, a good tax base from multiple sources, right? You have a bunch of retail stores that are collecting sales tax, and so that goes to the city. Actually, only about, 1 cent out of the 10 or so they collect goes to the city. So, but you can have a lot of money spent, and that can generate a lot of taxes. So you have Sales tax, typically you have businesses that are paying some kind of business tax. If you have manufacturing and such, they pay taxes and that funds the city. But we have very, very little retail. We have almost no industry. And so everything falls on property tax. And the properties tax is really, really low because we have the lowest property values, so our taxes are really low. So the only way you make up for that is with a special tax. And they're temporary for two reasons. One is it's hopes that these other industries will grow and take up, and begin to provide. So, a lot of pressure's been put on for medical marijuana to step up and fill that. Mm-hmm. The other reason they're temporary is if you make them permanent, people won't vote for them. So, and they didn't in the last election, even though we need a permanent tax unless we can attract other businesses and other industries to fill that gap. It will have to be, otherwise we can't get regular public services.
Yeah.
So, may not like it, but, our property taxes are really, really low. Even with this special tax, we're paying like, way less than 1/2 of what other places are paying.
Well, yeah, I believe I heard somebody say that it should be like 300 or more.
Oh, I forget the numbers, but most houses are selling for, average house in California is $440,000. The average one here is less than 200. So we're paying less than half what they're paying in property tax. You could expect your property tax to be double what it is. Yeah. So the extra 182 is pretty cheap.
The city government has had 5 years to find other sources of tax revenue, and they have done absolutely nothing. By voting for this tax, aren't we just putting a Band-Aid on the problem rather than forcing them to find a real long-term solution?
That's assuming that they haven't been trying, and I'm not sure that's fair. Really, I don't know anybody on city council, so I can't tell you. But I've watched the city council meetings and such, and I've been to the economic development company that tries to bring in industry. It seems like everybody's trying, and it's just hard. It's a tough sell to go to a company and ask them to come to California City. If you want to bring a business, right? What do? You do a little study business plan, right? You go look at other companies that are doing similar things to what you would do in California City, and there's nobody to look at because nobody's doing things similar, right? So you can't get the statistics to begin with. But let's say you're going to open up a retail outlet. You go look at a retail outlet here, and you say, what kind of money are you making? What kind of customer base do you have? And what you find is people in California City don't support the local businesses. They drive off to Lancaster and spend their money there, or Palmdale. And so other companies that want to come here look and go, I'm not going to come here. Nobody shops here. They go to Lancaster. If you want to change where you shop. Support the companies that are here, and more companies will come. But that's kind of my soapbox thing. Yeah. The question is what the city is trying. The city has tried. Actually, they've been pretty successful with the medical marijuana thing. They pushed this thing along as much as they can. They've run into roadblocks. It's not as easy because this is uncharted territory. Other cities haven't been doing this. There's not, so they have to figure it out as they go, and it's not easy. It's not easy for them. It's not easy for the companies that want to come here to get this through.
Right. I mean, there's just
the same's true.
A lot of paperwork.
Yeah, and the same's true of any kind of industry you want to bring in. You have to show that it's going to be supported by the community. You have to show that you have a trained, skilled employee base to run your business, right? If you want to start manufacturing, but they can't look at the other manufacturing businesses. They aren't here. There's no history.
Right.
So you have to kind of start small and build it up.
And you can probably expect some mistakes along the way.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. But they've been trying to bring things to California City since it opened. And it's not just one. Everybody, every city council, every, businessman, everybody wants it to succeed, but it's tough.
Yeah, it's just difficult because, you just don't have the history, as you said.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a lot of history of failure that works against us. We need some history of success.
Well, that's the end of our questions.
That's it? I thought we had more.
That's it. We only
Okay.
have a few, so.
All right. We have to come up with some more.
But yeah. We'll be hunting around and looking for other questions. If anybody have questions that you want answered that we can dive into and look into to see if we can get the truth about this Measure C, the special parcel tax.
Yeah.
So, but until then,
Thanks for watching.
thanks for watching. We'll see you July 31st.